All right, we're going to start working on making our own graffiti tag. You have free choice a little bit as to what you choose to do on your tag. You can do your name, you can do your initials. That's really up to you. We're going to have all these different like letter guides at our tables with all sorts of different alphabets. They all go in alphabetical order. Some of these fonts work well for graffiti, some of them not so much. They're just kind of all stacked together. You can find ones that you like, and you can practice doing your name in graffiti letters. There are a couple of rules that you need to keep in mind when we're doing our graffiti letters. Rule number 1, no teeny tiny skinny letters. Skinny letters do not work well because we're going to get to spray paint these later. And if you have a teeny tiny skinny letter like this, that's not going to work. You need your letters to be thick, okay? So that's what we want. We want nice thick letters. If you have an issue where you're like, my letter's teeny tiny, you can always trace around it to make it a chunkier letter. Then you can just erase the inside, okay? But we need thick letters. Rule number 2, our letters need to touch, okay? We're going to be cutting these out as all one piece. So I cannot have this. My letters are too far apart. I need my letters to touch. So that would look like this. So those letters are squished up next to each other. They are touching, okay? And then rule number 3 is your letters need to be big and take up the whole page. Now, I'm just kind of showing you here, but ultimately, your letters are going to be massive. So we can practice on a scrap piece of paper, small, but when you get your final piece, which is not going to be computer paper, it's going to be a much larger piece of tag board, your letters need to take up the space on the paper and they need to be large. Yes, big letters. No tiny letters, okay? So you can practice a couple times. I can find, obviously, I'm good at my name because that's my name. I can either straight free draw. So I'm working on my K. I'm just looking at what I'm drawing as I'm drawing. Okay. So I can straight free draw a letter. Or if I'm having a hard time, we're going to do something called, we'll call it bubbling. I'm going to write my letter like normal. And this is going to be like the bones of my letter. You're not supposed to see bones. They're on the inside of your body, right? So same with our letter. Once I've got the general idea, I can still look at different styles here. Maybe I like this, but I can go around my letter kind of as a guideline, okay? Then this goes away because it's the bones. Can't see it. And I have a letter. Again, if I do this and my letter's looking like this little skinny guy over here, you're just going to go around it again. Because remember the 3 things you have to have. Letters have to be thick, letters have to touch, and letters need to be big. So you can spend some time practicing on a piece of scrap paper, but don't spend the whole class. Eventually, you need to move on to your big paper. All right, so now I'm good to move on to my big paper. When I do it large and I make my nice large letters, I can either still do the guidelines where I do the bones of the letter, or I can freehand it. That is up to you. That is your choice, okay? In the presentation, you learned that graffiti tags have lots of style. So you can start to add some more fun details to your artwork. So when we look at our different examples here. We see lots of different, like this one has different lines running through it. That's got a different style. This has a completely different style, just based on how they make their letters. So rather than you thinking that you're writing letters, I want you to think about it as you're drawing your letters. So when you go to do your tag, you still have all these lovely guides, but your goal is it needs to be big. So I'm going to start up here towards the top of my paper and make sure that I'm going nice and big. Sometimes we have the issue of not being able to fit our name on our paper. If you have a longer name, like you have more than 4 or 5 letters in your name, you might want to do this, where you just really lightly write out your name. Like say your name is Samantha. You might write it nice and big, really lightly, because that's a lot of letters. Also, if your name is Samantha, you might want to just do your initials and then you only have to do 3. But I kind of write it out to make sure that it's going to fit. Like that's very light. You can barely see it. It's going to be easy for me to erase. But then when I go in and I start bubbling these letters, I know that they're going to fit on my page. Because if I just start like randomly, if I do my big old first letter this big, and then I have 8 other letters to fit in this tiny space, it's probably not going to work. So if you have a longer name, please write your name out very lightly first. All right. So now I'm going to go keep doing mine. I'm going to add my... I found this font over here. It's kind of fun. It ends in arrows. So that's kind of cool. If you would like to use a ruler to help you get some of those straighter, crisper lines, you are more than welcome to. It's going to take you some practice to draw these, and that's okay. Okay. So I can keep going back and adding more of those details. I liked that these were 3D, but I'm not gonna shade anything in. I'm not gonna add any sort of value or color with my pencil because I'm going to kind of spray paint these in a bit. So I don't want to do that. Anywhere that I need to go back and erase, I can. So obviously you are doing either your name or your initials. They can be as styled or not quite as styled as your heart so desires. You are the artist, make that choice. You just need to make sure that you are following the 3 rules. 1, that your letters are thick. 2, that they are touching. And 3, that they are large and they take up the space on your paper. So like if I put my hand on here, you can see each of my letters is like at least it's larger than my hand. I'm drawing nice and big. All right, once I've done it all in pencil, I'm going to grab a black Sharpie and I'm going to trace over all of my pencil lines. If I do not trace with a black Sharpie when I go to do the spray paint portion of this, it's going to cover up all my lines, and then my letters, since they're all touching, are going to be a very confusing jumble for me. So I'm going to make sure that I trace very slow and methodically with my black Sharpie. Take your time here. make it look good. And then I'm going to need to cut my graffiti tag out. Since my letters are all touching, I'm going to be cutting it out as one big piece. But if you have a lot of details, that's a lot of different angles you have to go at. So as I'm cutting, I'm actually not just following my outline. I'm going in and out and cutting what's going to be easiest. So I actually end up with a lot of little scraps and not just one big one, because I have to keep turning my paper in order to get all of these different angles. It is going to take you a minute to cut these out. Please cut neatly. Your work looks so much better when you don't have extra stuff hanging off the sides. Your edges line up. It looks nice. It is very difficult for you to have a full-blown conversation and cut at the same time. So this might be a time where you choose to be quiet and focus as you're cutting. The last thing you can do is if you have any gaps that you are unable to cut out because the letter crossed over each other, so things like if you have a B or a D in your name, there's a hole that you're not really able to get to. What you're going to do is you're going to take your black Sharpie and you're just going to color in that space or that gap so that it's not confusing. That way it's going to help stand out and you're going to know that that's the inside portion of a letter or where something overlaps. Okay, so I happen to have two in my name where I couldn't quite get in there with a pair of scissors because they're surrounded by letter, and that's fine. You're just going to fill them in with black.